Hello everyone, and welcome to the new YouTube channel, Prince Dakota's Adventures by author E.H. Allen. We'll begin. The characters and events portrayed in this book are fictitious, and the similarity to real persons living or dead is coincidental and not intended by the author. Once again, I'm author E.H. Allen, and I will be continuing with my book, Prince Dakota Angel and the Multiple Universe Guardians. For those of you that want to see my picture on the back of one of my books, you can check out the first upload when I began reading the book. Now I'm going to begin with Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Cracked Up and Detoxified Prince. 1 year after the creation of the Multiple Universe Guardians, Prince Dakota Angel, future leader of the United Epsilonian Republic, sighed as he reflected on the events of his life the last couple of years. The civilization he'd saved from a disastrous plague voted to make him their prince. He'd eventually be their leader once he turned 25 years of age, and they used to call themselves Alterans. But they and Dakota decided to change their name to reflect who they now were as a people after he became part of their lives post-plague. The name change would be released to the public once Dakota got back home to his own era and stopped traveling through time. Their new name was Dakodian Epsilon Theta Omicron Xenon Sapiens Civilization, which had an acronym of DETOX, DETOX. They and Dakota wanted a name that was unique with a pinch of humor. Dakota couldn't wait to hear what the media had to say about the ridiculously long and weird name, but it was what he and his people chose, so everyone on Earth would just have to live with it. New paragraph. Prince Dakota was currently standing on the balcony at the top floor of his palace, which had been built in the flying city of Jasper D. Jones. The city had been built for him by the Alterans when he used his supernatural powers to cure a respiratory plague that had been artificially introduced to the population by political terrorists called the Ashen. The Ashen were also Alteran, but they didn't share the same religious and political views with their government. They colluded with an enemy alien race, the Goa'uld, to attack the Alterans and other species that formed a united galactic government composed of 4 powerful advanced spacefaring races. During the attack, the Alterans, also known as Ancient Alterans in modern times, were infected with the plague which nearly wiped their entire race out. Only 100 million survived out of billions, and they scattered throughout the galaxy into different galaxies to try to survive. In every universe, in every other universe, but in the one Dakota visited them, the man-made plague was cured, and the Alterans and other races survived, including the Asgard. New paragraph. In most other universes, the Asgard were also attacked with an artificial virus that destroyed their ability to reproduce naturally, so they began cloning themselves. They were the second most powerful species behind the Alterans, so the Ashen naturally attacked the Asgard. The other 2 species ran for their lives and escaped without an attack on them. All 4 advanced civilizations were caught off guard since they had become complacent. They were so powerful that they didn't think they were vulnerable to attack. They were wrong. But in any event, since Prince Dakota was so powerful, he was able to assist with quickly capturing and punishing those responsible for the attack. With all that he'd done for the Alterans, building something grand to honor him seemed like the next logical step. And an advanced, faster-than-light capable flying city would fit the bill. All this had happened nearly 4 million years before modern times. But oddly enough, Dakota didn't time travel into the past to meet the Alterans. He simply flew into a universe that was much younger than his own. In his era, it was the year AD 1983. But in the universe he'd saved the Alterans, their era, existed at the same time as Dakota's in his universe. I'll take another short break and then continue. Welcome back. New paragraph. So, most of the time, when Prince Dakota traveled to different eras and different universes, he wasn't actually traveling through time. He was just moving between universes that existed at different periods of time. He found that traveling between universes was actually easier than time travel, and he didn't have to worry about civilization-ending paradoxes, which didn't traverse multiple universes. Dakota traveled through time when he needed, but he tried to avoid it most of the time to prevent screwing up history. Many of the mugs were from different eras, sometimes millions of years apart, but they all existed at the same time and would grow at the same rate. Dakota was 14, soon to be 15 in a few weeks, and a 14-year-old from the medieval era in another universe would grow at the same rate as him. Lots of mugs were fascinated at the idea and couldn't wait to embark on the ride of a lifetime. New paragraph. The Alterran leaders knew early on they wanted to make Prince Dakota a future leader for them, so they talked to him about grooming him for the job, which he'd have for life. It would be a democratic monarchy, so he'd have to choose heirs to succeed him should something happen to him, which they were confident wouldn't with his quantum superhuman powers. They teach and train him and his heirs to lead the Alterrans down a new path, one of salvation instead of extreme arrogance, which is what got them in trouble in the first place. Dakota had been time traveling when it was decided to start looking for heirs, and he'd been in the year AD 2015, so he began there. Since he was too young to be married and had no kids, the unique decision was made to start looking for heirs in that era. The first 20 heirs would be set in stone, so to speak, so they would not drop down the line of succession once Dakota married and had children. The 21st heir on would drop as he had children, but only if they had less super genes than his children. New paragraph. The Epsilonian monarchy line of succession would be a bit different from most monarchies on Earth. Their monarchy would be determined by how many super genes the heirs had. Prince Dakota had over 500 super genes, which is how he had all his superpowers. The genes were dormant until he was struck by lightning while in the playground in the 6th grade. The lightning was created by a meteor that was composed of an exotic substance which came from a destroyed planet in another galaxy. The meteor exploded inside a large thunderstorm cell just below the stratosphere. It energized all the electrons in the storm and created the massive bolt that slammed into Dakota's chest, nearly killing him. He'd been in a coma for a week, and once he woke up, he began to develop superpowers, the first of which was telepathy. He was able to sense emotions in adults and teens and fully read the minds of babies and small children. Dakota had been told by scientists that less than 1% of the bolt entered his body. The rest went into the ground harmlessly. An iron swing set that took most of the blow had been melted and destroyed. Dakota had been the only student on those swings at the time. They told him if just 2% of the bolt had hit him, it would have done massive damage to his nervous system and he'd never have survived. New paragraph. The Ultra Ascended beings, also called UA beings, made sure to control how much high energy lightning went into Prince Dakota's body. They knew what they were doing, and everything went according to plan. Dakota had a heart attack after he'd woken up from the coma, but when the doctor shocked him to restart his heart, it inadvertently activated still more super genes, also called GL genes, after the Alterran scientists that discovered them nearly 4 million years ago. Ganos Law was her name, and she'd been a brilliant scientist, and now she was a UA being that served on the Grand Council that oversaw all ascended beings in all universes, of which there were nearly 2 million. The regular ascended beings were nearly omnipotent and could travel anywhere in their particular universe without having to rely on any type of technology, such as life support and faster than light. Life support included spacesuits, and space anomalies, such as supernovas and black holes, only entertained them. They were no threat to them. Ascended beings were also not allowed to interfere in the daily lives of corporeal beings. But they could help those that had been killed violently or murdered, such as helping them ascend. New paragraph. The UA beings have a lot of omnipotent power, but they too are not allowed to interfere in the daily lives of corporeal beings, nor can they interfere in wars. But the creator of the universe, whom Prince Dakota calls by the acronym KOTU, C-O-T-U, knew something had to be done to control evil people and civilizations that were intent on controlling the entirety of all the universes, and that would not be allowed. So the UA Council was allowed to create a superpowered army of corporeal beings from different intelligent species from different universes. There would be rules, of course. The new army would have broad authority and power and would be able to stop evil empires and individuals from wreaking havoc across the universe. And the most unusual part of the plan was that all the soldiers would be kids and young adults aged 10 to 21. Most adults had obligations, such as a family to support or a job they may not want to leave with ties to a community. but kids had no such obligations and were free to participate in the program. The only issue was coming up with backstories to tell the public and others not closely related to the kids, and the UA Council was gifted at doing just that. Everyone will want to know why the kids were frequently not around. I'm going to take another short break, and then I'll continue with the chapter. Welcome back. New paragraph. In most situations, Mug soldiers' employment was classified to the public if it was a primitive or less advanced culture, such as Earth during the 21st century or before. But advanced civilizations had no such limits, and most people in those eras were okay with the superpowered kid army employed by ultra-ascended beings to protect the universes from insane people intent on ruling viciously. In some cases, limited exposure to the public in less advanced and primitive eras about the Guardian League was allowed, such as during a massive natural disaster or pandemic. People were usually calmer if they knew a superpowered Mug army was keeping them safe. Prince Dakota's case was a situation such as that. Since he'd been struck by lightning, the whole world knew once he developed superpowers. Once he flew for the first time, the cat was out of the bag. And everyone knew he was the legendary Prince Dakota Angel, who'd lead a superpowered army with kids and young adults. And people were excited in his universe because once he was done traveling through space and time and returned home, he planned to allow people who were 10 to 21 years old to apply and try out to serve in the Mug Army. 200 a year on Earth would be allowed to apply until the Mug Army was complete, and those from other universes and species would continue to be chosen. New paragraph. Parents were okay with their children being chosen to be Mugs because it was a legendary and powerful group, and also because Guardians could not be killed. It was the job of the Ascended Guardian Group, or AGG soldiers, to keep the corporeal soldiers safe from death. But if any Mug had to be pulled to safety to prevent death, it would be considered a virtual death, or VD, and that soldier would lose a life. The soldier would be returned to battle, but they only had so many lives like in a video game, and if they used up all their lives, they would be removed from the battle, and would have to sit out the rest of the mission, leaving the remaining soldiers possibly struggling to complete it. That was one reason Prince Dakota made his soldiers train regularly to hone their skills. The Mugs were doing a fantastic job of following the rules and staying alert to their surroundings, so only a few had been removed by AGGs. But the army was still fairly new, so Dakota was certain more might have to be pulled to safety. New paragraph. Another reason most parents supported the Guardian cause was because a lot of kids were saved from horrible deaths by Dakota when he appeared at the right time. Some kids had terminal diseases that were incurable, like the bubonic plague, AIDS, stage 4 cancer, or some such other ailment. Dakota was able to use the resources given to him by the UA beings to cure anyone completely, as long as they agreed to be a Mug for 5 years. Most parents agreed without hesitation, and some kids and young adults have been saved from terrible accidents or natural disasters by Dakota. He informed them about the League, and that if they didn't agree to join for 5 years, their memory would be wiped, and they'd be returned to the previous fatal situation. After 5 years, if they wanted to retire, they could do so and return to their previous life. But he made sure they understood that if they stayed with the League long term, they'd be protected from harm for life, even after retirement. They could live out a long life, and their children would be automatically be given entrance into the League at 5 years of age and would be enrolled in the prestigious Mug Academy. Young adults that were 18 to 21 needed no permission from parents and could join of their own accord. And children who were orphans and in the child care system were also allowed to join without permission from any foster parents, orphanage directors, or governments. Dakota and the UA beings were allowed to override in the case of child care system dealings, since a lot of kids in that situation were miserable. And the different governments of modern Earth usually agreed, since having a child Mug citizen meant access to advanced technology. Everyone, this concludes the first half of Chapter 1, and I will continue in another upload with Chapter 2. Thank you, and have a good day. I look forward to seeing you again.